Hello, dear students. I'm Subhashri and I am back over here with this concept lecture on figures of speech. This is the second part of the lecture that we had last time, where we studied figures of speech based on similarity, contrast, and sound. Today, we are going to go further with this series with figures of speech based on association and indirect expression. So, let's not waste any more time and go ahead. So, the very first figure of speech based on association we have is hyperbole. Now, this particular figure of speech means a statement made emphatic by overstatement. That means you are trying to say more than something which is necessary to make your point clear. Emphatic is to make something clear, right? So, it is using a deliberate exaggeration. Okay, it is used for creating some sort of comic effect, making you realize the gravity of something when it is serious, or to give you some ironic effect. Okay, for example, she wept oceans of tears. Now we know nobody can weep oceans of tears, but this is the exaggeration, this is the hyperbole being used over here to signify how hurt she was by the incident and how continuously she was weeping. Okay, similarly, in the second statement, this is a statement taken or quote taken from Shakespeare's Macbeth. In this particular scene, we get to know that Lady Macbeth is saying, all the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. That means she had committed the crime and now she is, faced over by the tragedy of it, the trauma of it, and she can see the blood in her hands again and again. And she feels that the the smell of blood, the rotten smell of blood is so much there that it will not be sweetened by all the perfumes of Arabia. Now, this is an exaggeration again, right? So this is the first figure of speech based on association called hyperbole. Let's move on to the next one, metonymy. Now, metonymy means substitution of name. So basically, this is a figure of speech in which a thing or concept is referred to by the name of something which is closely associated with that thing or concept. For example, from the cradle to the grave. So rather than saying from childhood or childbirth or infancy to death, deathbed, I'm saying from the cradle to the grave. Cradle signifies your infancy when a small child, and grave, your deathbed, right? So rather than saying from infancy to death, we are saying cradle to the grave because cradle is associated with infants and grave is associated with the dead. Okay. For second example over here, the pen is mightier than the sword. Now we know it is not exactly the pen which is mightier than the sword, but a writer who is mightier than the people who use violence. Okay, so you know here, writer is being substituted with pen, and people who use violence is being substituted with sword. Okay, so the pen is mightier than the sword. Third example over here, the crown has lost much of its ancient power. Now, the crown here means the king or the queen. Okay, because the crown is worn by them. So, rather than saying the king or the kingdom or the queen has lost the power, it is the crown which has lost its power. So, this is metonymy. Now, we move on to the third figure of speech of this kind, which is synecdoche. Now, a synecdoche is a figure of speech in which a term for a part is used to refer to something whole, or a whole is used to refer to something part. Now, what does it mean? For example, rather than referring to something in its whole entity, I will use a part of it to signify the whole of it. Okay, for example, here, he has many mouths to feed. You know, it is not exactly just mouths he's feeding, but the people or family members, right? So rather than saying people, family members, members of his home, he is being said to feed many mouths. Okay, so mouth is used, a small part is used to refer to the whole over here. Similarly, next one, all hands to the pumps. Now, hands. You know, it's not just the hands which are going to the pump, but people, the crew, the people who are present over there, all of them should go to the pump. So again, part is used to represent the whole. Third, now we have another part of this figure of speech where a whole is used to designate a part. Okay, now for example, India won the first test match against Australia. Now you know it is not actually India as a whole which has won, but the Indian cricket team or any Indian particular Indian team which has won the match. So here again, whole of India is used to represent part of your Indian cricket team. Okay, so this is synecdoche. Let's move to the fourth one of this kind, which is transferred epithet. Now, very first thing we have to understand in this is epithet means adjective. So you are basically transferring an adjective in this figure of speech. Okay. For example, it is a sad world. They are saying over here, it is a sad world. Now you know world cannot be sad. World cannot have feelings. It is the people who are sad. So, the adjective sad, which belong to the people, has been transferred to the world. Okay. So, this is transferred epithet. This epithet of sad, which belongs originally to people, has been transferred to something else, which is world. Similarly, here, he passed a sleepless night. Now, this adjective with night does not fit here. Nights cannot be sleepless. It is he who is sleepless, the person who is sleepless, right? So, the adjective of sleepless has been passed from him to night. Okay, transferred from him to night. While it is he who is sleepless, they are saying the night is sleepless. This is used to create an exaggerated effect to make you realize the mood of something, like to aggravate the mood of something. Rather than saying the people are sad, when you say it is a sad world, it creates a poetic effect in what you are saying. Right? So this is the figure of speech transferred epithet. Now we move on to the next part of our figures of speech, which is based on indirect expression. Now, rather than saying something directly, we are using this to nullify the effect or exaggerate the effect. So these figures of speech are based on indirect expression. Now, the very first figure of speech we have over here is euphemism. Now, this is a figure of speech commonly used to replace a word or phrase that is related to a concept which might be difficult for others to, or uncomfortable for others to digest or, accept. Okay. It is usually used to replace something which is harsh, impolite, unpleasant, something you might not want to hear. Okay. So it subdues the effect of the gravity of the talk that is being said. Okay. For example, he has fallen asleep or he has passed away, which is used to say, as an indirect form for he is dead. Okay. So rather than saying someone has died, we use this as a figure of speech. He has fallen asleep, he has passed away. Okay. He is no more. So this is used to subdue the effect. Next one is you are telling me a fairy tale. Now this is used to replace lie. Fairy tales are not real, not true. So rather than saying that you are lying to me, he's saying you are telling me a fairy tale. Okay. Let's say someone has not made or someone has not been selected for a team. So rather than saying you failed, you would say you did not make it to the team, right? So this is used to replace the harsher reality of things. This is called euphemism. Next, we move on to litotes. Now, litotes is the opposite of hyperbole. In hyperbole, you exaggerate something. This is an understatement in which a positive statement is expressed by negating its opposite. Okay, so rather than saying something positive, you will say not the negative word. Okay, so roundabout way of saying the positive things. Okay, this sounds like a strange definition, but we have a few examples over here. The man is no fool. That means he is quite clever. So rather than saying the man is clever, we are using the man is no fool. Okay, reaching the moon was no ordinary task. Obviously, it was a great task. So rather than saying that it was a big task, humongous task, great task, you are saying it was no ordinary task. So using negative for something positive. Okay. He was not unfamiliar with the plays of Shakespeare. So you are saying not unfamiliar, that means he was familiar, quite familiar with the plays. Okay. So these are called litotes. Next, we move on to irony. Now, irony is a very important figure of speech and a rather large figure of speech, you can say, because it has several types. Okay, we cannot focus on all the types, but we can understand a few over here. Now, irony is basically contrast between reality and what is expected. Okay, it is incongruity between the two things, the reality and the expectation of yours. Okay, it can also be a difference to show what might be expected to happen but what actually happens. Okay, now there are three types of ironies: verbal, dramatic, and situational. For verbal irony, we have example over here. For example, let's say you know there is a fool in front of you who knows nothing, and you say to him, of course, you know everything, my friend. So, this is verbal irony. Rather than saying you know nothing, I am saying you know everything. So, I am saying the opposite of what I mean. Okay. Situational irony, for example, given over here, digging a hole for someone else, but you fall into it yourself. You might see this a lot in Bollywood movie tropes, right? So you have done something for others, and you are the one who is facing it, right? So digging a hole for your enemy, but somehow you end up falling into it. So this is situational irony. Now, what is dramatic irony? This is where in a work of literature, audience knows the reality, and maybe some members of the cast or the play know the reality, but the main characters don't know. Okay, for example, we have the play Othello by Shakespeare, where the audience knows that Iago is not a good friend, that Desdemona is actually a good wife rather than being represented as she was represented in the play, but Othello does not know it. So this is the dramatic irony that the main character does not know, but everybody else knows the reality of the matter. So this is irony. You have several more types of irony like Socratic irony, cosmic irony, but those are not as important as these three. So this is irony. Let's move on to the next one. Rhetorical question. Now, this is a very good figure of speech which is used a lot by our politicians. You would know if you once understand what is this figure of speech. So, it is a figure of speech in the form of a question posed for rhetorical effect rather than for the purpose of getting an answer. Now, you are actually asking a question to someone, but there is no need of an answer. It is just made to persuade the other person, or deliver what you want to deliver more effectively. Like your politicians say to this group of audience who might be there in the rallies and all, that do you not want water? Do you not want electricity? Now everybody wants that. Why would you say no? But why are they asking these questions? To address their target audience, to get their attention. So, this is the effect that these rhetorical questions have. For example, is India not a democracy? Do we, the citizens, have no say in the workings of our country? Of course, India is a democracy. Of course, you have a say. But when you are asking this, you are asking, trying to grab the attention of the people. Okay, can anyone here say that I am dishonest? Obviously, no one can say that, right? Hopefully. Okay. Can you get oil out of sand? Of course not. Okay, so this is what is rhetorical question. So we have wrapped up two kinds of figures of speech based on association and indirect expression today. I hope this has helped you people. I'm again leaving you with one question, and you have to identify what is the figure of speech over here. This class on figures of speech was not a bad idea. Please let me know in the comment section what is the answer. Thank you very much. Have a great time ahead.